7 places so dangerous, humans aren't meant to go, Machiavelli's warning. Intro. There are places on this earth that do not want you there. Not in the way a locked door doesn't want you. Not in the way a fence or a warning sign doesn't want you. But in the deepest, most primal sense, places where nature itself, or the darkness of human history, has made it unmistakably clear, you were not built for this. And yet, people go some out of curiosity, some out of arrogance, some out of desperation, and many of them do not return the same, or do not return at all. Niccolo Machiavelli, the Renaissance philosopher whose name has become synonymous with ruthless wisdom and unflinching realism, once wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." He was speaking of power, of leadership, of survival in a world that does not reward naivety. But that same principle, that same cold, clear-eyed warning, applies to the physical world as much as the political one. There are forces in this world that do not negotiate. They do not make exceptions for courage, or youth, or good intentions. They simply are what they are. And Machiavelli's greatest lesson was this: a wise man respects what he cannot control. Today, we are going to look at 7 places so dangerous that humans, by every reasonable measure, were simply not meant to go. These are not urban legends. These are real locations, and each one carries a warning that echoes across centuries, from the cold stone halls of Renaissance Florence all the way to the world you inhabit today. Stay until the end. The final place on this list is not a volcano, not a jungle, not a war zone. It is something far closer, far more dangerous, and far more relevant to your life than you might expect. If wisdom like this speaks to you, subscribe to this channel right now. Every week, we bring you content that challenges the way you think, the way you see the world, and the way you live. Now, let us begin. The door to hell, Derwiz, Turkmenistan. It has been burning for over 50 years. Deep in the heart of the Karakum Desert in Turkmenistan, there is a crater approximately 70 meters wide and 30 meters deep that has been engulfed in flames since the early 1970s. Locals call it the door to hell, and standing at its edge, looking down into that writhing, roaring inferno, it is almost impossible to disagree with the name. The story of how it came to be is almost as extraordinary as the site itself. Soviet geologists were drilling for natural gas when the ground beneath their equipment collapsed, opening a massive sinkhole. Fearing the spread of poisonous methane gas, they made a decision: set it on fire. They believed it would burn itself out in a few days or weeks. It has not stopped burning since. Machiavelli warned repeatedly about the danger of underestimating forces you do not fully understand. He wrote, "Never was anything great achieved without danger." But he also counseled that the wise leader does not enter a battle he cannot win. The men who lit that fire thought they were solving a problem. What they actually did was create one that has outlasted them all, one that continues to burn with an indifference to human intention that is almost philosophical in its completeness. Tourists have visited the door to hell, drawn by its terrible beauty. Some have camped at its edge. One explorer descended into it, briefly, in a specially designed heat suit, and described what he encountered as otherworldly. The heat, the sound, the overwhelming sensation of being somewhere human beings simply were not designed to survive. Machiavelli would have looked into that crater and said, "This is what happens when men mistake boldness for wisdom." You can admire the fire. You can study it, you can even respect it, but you cannot control it and you cannot survive it. Some forces in this world are simply beyond you. The first step to power, real power, is knowing the difference. The Danakil Depression, Ethiopia. If the door to hell is a dramatic, man-made wound in the earth, then the Danakil Depression is something far more ancient and far more unnerving, because this place was never meant for us at all. Located in northeastern Ethiopia, the Danakil Depression is one of the lowest, hottest, and most geologically active places on the surface of the planet. Temperatures regularly exceed 50 degrees Celsius, that's over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The landscape looks like the surface of an alien world. Vast salt flats that shimmer like mirrors, fields of sulfurous yellow and acid green, bubbling lava lakes that glow orange against a sky that feels too close and too cruel. The air smells of sulfur. The ground itself can give way without warning, plunging a person into pools of boiling brine or acidic liquid that would dissolve flesh in moments. And yet people live near it, and some, the Afar people, one of the most resilient communities on Earth, work in it every day. They mine salt from the flats in temperatures that would kill an unprepared outsider within hours. They have adapted, over thousands of years, to conditions that break most people within minutes. This is perhaps the most Machiavellian lesson the Danakil offers, that what is dangerous for one person is simply daily life for another. Power, Machiavelli taught, is always relative. It is always contextual. It is always built on preparation, knowledge, and ruthless adaptation to reality, not to the reality you wish existed, but the one that actually does. The Danakil Depression does not apologize for what it is. It has never pretended to be safe. It simply exists, volcanic, indifferent, and ancient beyond comprehension. And it destroys those who approach it without respect. Machiavelli would say, respect the terrain. Know the ground before you walk on it. In politics, in business, in life, and most certainly in the Danakil Depression, the Mariana Trench, the Pacific Ocean. We speak often of outer space as the great unexplored frontier. Of the stars and the planets and the cold silence between galaxies. And that is true. Space is vast, and we have barely touched it, but here is a fact that most people do not fully absorb. We know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the deepest parts of our own ocean. The Mariana Trench, located in the western Pacific Ocean, plunges nearly 11 kilometers, almost 7 miles, below the surface of the sea. At its deepest point, known as Challenger Deep, the pressure is approximately 1,000 times greater than at sea level. The temperature hovers just above freezing. There is no light whatsoever. It is, by every measure that matters to the human body, an environment designed to kill us. And yet life thrives there. Strange, alien, extraordinary life. Creatures that have never seen sunlight. Fish with translucent skin and bioluminescent lures. Organisms that feed on chemical reactions rather than photosynthesis. Life that has adapted, over millions of years, to conditions of absolute crushing darkness. Machiavelli was fascinated by the hidden. He believed that most of the forces that shape our lives operate beneath the surface, unseen, unfelt, but enormously powerful. Everyone sees what you appear to be, he wrote, few experience what you really are. The ocean is the ultimate metaphor for this. What you see on the surface, the glittering, sunlit waves, gives you no preparation whatsoever for what lies beneath. Only a handful of human beings have ever descended to the deepest point of the Mariana Trench. The engineering required to survive the journey is staggering. Vessels built to withstand pressures that would crush a conventional submarine like a tin can. And even then, those who descended described a profound, almost spiritual unease. The sense of being somewhere fundamentally, cosmically wrong for human presence. The trench teaches us what Machiavelli never tired of teaching. That there are depths in this world, in the ocean, in human nature, in the systems of power and politics, that cannot be navigated by the unprepared. Know what you're descending into, or be crushed by what you don't understand. The Zone of Alienation, Chernobyl, Ukraine. On April 26, 1986, at 1:23 in the morning, the world changed. Reactor 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in what was then the Soviet Union exploded. It was the worst nuclear disaster in human history. In the hours, days, and weeks that followed, approximately 350,000 people were evacuated from the surrounding area. An exclusion zone of roughly 2,600 square kilometers, nearly 1,000 square miles, was established. The authorities gave it a clinical, administrative name, the Zone of Alienation. But to those who lived there, and to those who still, illegally, return, it is simply known as the Zone. And it is one of the most haunting, most dangerous, and most philosophically resonant places on Earth. The invisible nature of radiation is what makes Chernobyl so uniquely terrifying. The forests look alive and green. The buildings of Pripyat, the city built to house plant workers and their families, stand mostly intact, draped in vines and reclaimed by nature. There are wild horses roaming the fields, wolves hunting through the empty streets, birds nesting in the rusted Ferris wheel of an amusement park that never officially opened. It looks like peace. It looks like nature reclaiming what was taken from it, but the ground, the air, the very dust holds a poison that cannot be seen, cannot be smelled, and cannot be felt, until it is already too late. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the nature of hidden danger. He warned that the most catastrophic threats are never the ones that announce themselves openly. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. Chernobyl is the ultimate trap, beautiful, quiet, and lethal to the unaware. People do go there. Tourists, photographers, thrill seekers, and the deeply curious travel to Chernobyl every year. Some go legally, on guided tours, wearing dosimeters that measure their radiation exposure. Others, the stalkers, as they are known, sneak in illegally, spending days or weeks in the zone, sleeping in abandoned buildings, exploring places no sanctioned tour would ever take them. Machiavelli would understand the impulse. He might even respect the boldness. But he would never confuse boldness with wisdom. And the Zone of Alienation makes that distinction in the most unforgiving way imaginable. The Congolese rainforest, Democratic Republic of Congo. There is a place in the heart of Africa so vast, so dense, and so alive that even today, in the age of satellite imaging and GPS, it remains largely unmapped. The Congo Basin, home to the second largest rainforest on Earth, covers an area roughly the size of the entire continent of Western Europe. And within its depths exist ecosystems, species, and communities of life that science has yet to fully catalog. It is also one of the most dangerous places on the planet for a human being to enter unprepared. The dangers are layered. There are the obvious ones, the wildlife. The forest elephant, The most dangerous land animal in Africa, moves silently through the undergrowth. Gorillas, chimpanzees, forest buffalo, and an astonishing variety of venomous snakes inhabit the same dense vegetation that makes navigation nearly impossible. A person can be standing 5 meters from a dangerous animal and have no idea it exists until it is already moving toward them. But the Congo's dangers go beyond wildlife. The forest itself is a labyrinth. Rivers that appear navigable suddenly become impassable. Paths that look clear dissolve into swamp without warning. The humidity is suffocating. Disease, malaria, yellow fever, Ebola, lurks in the water, the insects, and the soil. And then there is the human element. The Democratic Republic of Congo has been the site of devastating armed conflict for decades. Militia groups operate within the forest's cover, and for an outsider, the political geography of who controls what territory, and when, is a constantly shifting, life or death calculation. Machiavelli understood complex terrain better than almost anyone. He wrote, "A prince should have no other aim or thought, nor take up any other thing for his study, but war in its organization and discipline." By which he meant, know your environment. Know the forces at play within it, know your enemies, your allies, and the ground beneath your feet, because ignorance of any one of these is not an inconvenience. It is a death sentence. The Congo does not offer second chances. Its complexity demands respect, preparation, and the humility to understand that no amount of bravery substitutes for knowledge. Walk into it without that knowledge and the forest will swallow you whole, not out of malice, but out of simple, indifferent nature. This is perhaps the most Machiavellian lesson of all. The world does not care about your intentions. It only responds to your preparation. North Sentinel Island, the Andaman Sea. There is a small island in the Andaman Sea, roughly the size of Manhattan, that may be the most isolated place on Earth. Not because of its geography, though the surrounding waters are treacherous. Not because of disease or radiation or extreme temperature, but because of the people who live there. The Sentinelese are one of the last truly uncontacted peoples on Earth. They have lived on North Sentinel Island for an estimated 60,000 years, making them one of the oldest continuous civilizations in human history. They have had no sustained contact with the outside world. They have no knowledge of modern medicine, modern language, or modern technology. And they have made it unmistakably, violently clear that they do not want any. Outsiders who have approached the island have been met with a hail of arrows. In 2018, an American missionary named John Allen Chow illegally paid fishermen to take him near the island. He approached the shore in a kayak, reportedly crying out that he loved them and that Jesus loved them. He was killed. His body was never recovered. The Indian government, which claims sovereignty over the island but has adopted a policy of non-contact to protect the Sentinelese, did not attempt to retrieve it. He was not the first. He will likely not be the last. Machiavelli wrote about the folly of imposing your values, your beliefs, and your vision of the world onto people who have not asked for them and do not want them. He understood that power, true, lasting power, is never simply taken. It must be understood, it must be earned, and sometimes, the wisest exercise of power is to leave what you cannot control exactly where you found it. The Sentinelese have survived 60,000 years without us. They have survived colonialism, the modern age, and every attempt, however well or poorly intentioned, to bring them into the world we have built. Their resistance is not ignorance. It is sovereignty. It is, in its own way, the purest expression of Machiavellian self-determination. We define our world. You do not enter it. Their island is legally protected. Approaching within 5 nautical miles is a criminal offense under Indian law. And yet, something in the human spirit, the restless, conquering, boundary-defying human spirit, continues to be drawn to it. Machiavelli would say, "Some battles cannot be won. The wise man does not fight them. Leave the sentinelese in peace. It is the only sane, the only ethical, and by every measure, the only survivable choice." The human mind in chaos, the 7th place. And now we arrive at the 7th place. The one we promised you. The one that is not a jungle, not an ocean, not a radiation-soaked city or a volcanic desert or an uncontacted island. The 7th place is one you carry with you everywhere you go. It is the most dangerous environment you will ever inhabit. And unlike the door to hell or the Mariana Trench or the zone of alienation, you cannot visit it and leave. You live there, every single day. The 7th place is the human mind, in chaos. Machiavelli spent his life studying power. He studied rulers and the ruled, conquerors and the conquered, the rise of empires and their collapse. And again, across every example, every historical case study, every observation he made of the men and women who shaped the world, he arrived at the same conclusion. The most catastrophic defeats, the most ruinous collapses, the most unnecessary suffering, they did not come from external enemies. They came from within. From fear that was never examined. From ambition that was never disciplined. From pride that could not accept correction. From a mind that was never truly understood by the person living inside it. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles, Machiavelli wrote. Which is to say, it is not your circumstances that define you. It is the quality of your thinking. The clarity of your inner world. The degree to which you govern yourself before attempting to govern anything or anyone else. A mind in chaos is more dangerous than any jungle. Because in a jungle, the threats are external. You can see them, or at least prepare for the possibility of them. But in a chaotic mind, the threats wear the face of reason. They disguise themselves as justified anger, as righteous pride, as necessary pessimism, as pragmatic surrender. They convince you that your cage is freedom, that your fear is wisdom, that your smallness is safety. Machiavelli watched great men be destroyed not by their enemies but by their inability to manage themselves in moments of pressure. He watched rulers who had built brilliant careers collapse under the weight of one uncontrolled emotion, one moment of rage, one act of cruelty born from insecurity, one decision made from panic rather than preparation. And he documented it all with the clinical, compassionate precision of a doctor cataloging a disease. The disease is internal disorder. The cure, the only cure, is self-knowledge. Know your fears, name them, look at them directly, the way you would look at a map of dangerous terrain before entering it. Know your patterns of thinking, especially the destructive ones. Know the moments when you are most vulnerable to poor decisions, when you are tired, when you feel humiliated, when you are desperate for validation, when you believe no one is watching. Know these things not to punish yourself for them, not to wallow in shame or self-criticism, but because knowledge is the only form of armor that actually works. You cannot defend a position you cannot see. You cannot navigate terrain you have never studied. Machiavelli also understood the danger of the echo chamber, the mind that only feeds itself what it already believes, that surrounds itself with agreement and flattery, that confuses the absence of challenge with the presence of truth. He wrote that a wise prince must actively seek people who will tell him hard truths, because the world is full of people who will tell you only what you want to hear. And a leader, or a person, who lives only in comfortable agreement with themselves is being slowly, invisibly destroyed. The human mind in chaos does not feel dangerous. That is precisely what makes it so deadly. It feels familiar. It feels normal. Because it is yours. Because you have lived in it your whole life. Because the chaos, over time, becomes invisible, like the radiation in Chernobyl's soil. You walk through it every day not knowing it is killing you. The antidote is deliberate, courageous, consistent self-examination. The practices that create this are not mysterious. They are ancient: journaling, meditation, reading philosophy, seeking the honest counsel of people who respect you enough to challenge you. Sitting in silence, real silence, with the full weight of your own inner life, without flinching and without running. This is the most dangerous place you will ever visit. And it is also the most important. Because unlike the Mariana Trench, which requires billions of dollars of engineering to descend into, or Chernobyl, which requires a hazmat suit and a dosimeter and government permission, the human mind is accessible right now. In this moment, with no equipment required, you can begin the exploration today, without leaving the room you're sitting in. Machiavelli ended his masterwork The Prince not with a celebration of power, but with a plea, a passionate, almost desperate appeal for a leader who was truly worthy of the challenges of the time. A leader who had done the inner work, who had cultivated not just intelligence and strategy, but character, who had been to the dangerous places inside themselves and returned from them, not unscathed, but transformed. That is the journey available to you. That is what all the other places on this list, in their own terrifying ways, are pointing toward. The door to hell burns. The Mariana Trench crushes. The zone of alienation poisons. The Sentinelese stand guard at the boundary of their world with arrows. And the human mind, in chaos, quietly destroys the person living inside it, if that person never has the courage to face it honestly. Face it, study it, govern it. That is Machiavelli's deepest warning. And his greatest gift. Closing. 7 places. 7 warnings. 7 invitations to see the world, and yourself, more clearly than before. From the ancient, burning crater in Turkmenistan to the crushing darkness of the deepest ocean. From the poisoned beauty of Chernobyl's ghost city to the sovereign silence of an island that has kept the world at arrow point for 60,000 years. From the labyrinthine danger of the Congo's rainforest to the volcanic indifference of the Danakil Depression. And finally, most importantly, to the most treacherous terrain of all. The one you wake up inside every single morning. Machiavelli was not a villain. History has been unkind to his legacy in that regard. He was a realist, a man who had seen too much of the world's cruelty to pretend it didn't exist. A man who believed, deeply and sincerely, that the greatest act of courage is not to charge blindly into danger, but to understand it, to see it clearly. To prepare honestly, and then, only then, to move. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler, he wrote, is to look at the men he has around him. We might extend that wisdom. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a person is to look at the inner world they have cultivated. The thoughts they allow to govern them. The fears they have faced, or refused to face. The courage they have shown not on battlefields or at the edges of volcanoes, but in the quiet, private, unwitnessed moments of honest self-reflection. That is where real power is born. Not in conquest, not in control over others, but in the one thing no external force can ever take from you, a mind that has been to the dangerous places, survived them, and come back wiser. You have just been to 7 of them. What you do next is up to you. If this video moved you, if it stirred something in your thinking, or challenged you in a way that felt necessary, then please subscribe to this channel right now. Every single week, we bring you content like this, wisdom drawn from the greatest minds in history, applied to the questions that actually matter in your life. Hit subscribe, turn on that notification bell, share this with someone who needs to hear it because the world is full of dangerous places. But the most important exploration you will ever undertake begins right here, right now, with you. Machiavelli is watching, so is the person you are becoming. We'll see you in the next one. Subscribe, share this with someone bold enough to face the truth. And let's keep going.